Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Japanese Shabaru podcast. We are gonna kick off with some Gachiakuta discussions, and I just wanna talk about this. I am a manga reader, and I am very happy with how well the Studio Bones is actually animating this series, and the colors look great. The animation quality is amazing, and the voice acting is pretty spot on. And I haven't watched the dub, but from what I'm hearing, the dub has been really good. So you, one of the best parts about Gachiakuta is you can watch it however you like, whether you want to watch a sub or whether you want to watch a dub. Great way for new anime fans or any anime fan to just get into a new seasonal anime. So very highly recommend Gachiakuta. So this episode kind of starts off with uh the whole narrator just kind of like putting words together, kind of putting sentences together about how this world works. And so I'm gonna read off some of the ways it works. It is said that the object treated with care, a soul will come to inhabit it. And then, so basically, what it's saying is like the more you care for an object or something you of value that you put in, it actually makes it come alive. So anything with any sort of value is actually not just any object. You Whatever you make it worth is what it's gonna be, and it could even come to life essentially. And that goes more into the power system, which is gonna be explained or hopefully get into like episode 2 or episode 3. So I don't really want to spoil that for anime onlys. And then we see how this like world is kind of like treated in this it's called the sphere. And basically right here, everybody's like kind of like super clean. They're very not, they don't really like anything that's damaged or scratched up. They want to have everything just be perfectly neat and perfectly clean. So when anything gets any kind of like filth or scratch, they just throw it out. And these are like the people with power or people with wealth. And not only do they do this with objects, they also kind of do this with humans, as is later stated that even humans who are deemed too trashy or too filthy, or if they commit a crime, they usually get tossed away just like any other dirt or trash would. So in this world where like trash and filth is not very welcomed, we have our main protagonist Rudo, who just starts off kind of trying to look around to see what people have thrown away, because a lot of these people, even though the stuff could be fixed or could be still have some sort of use to it, they just decide to throw it away, and instead of rather like fix it, they rather replace it with something new. And they kind of like have this whole society divided into one where it's like the people that actually inherit the sphere, and then the other half is kind of like the people that don't have anything. They're kind of like labeled the tribesfolk. So these are the people that are usually filthy and usually get treated like trash. You can honestly see that they don't have a good way to make any wealth or any sort of like any sort of way to move up in society. And Rudo kind of like goes to the facility where all the trash is, right? And he gets shot up, and eventually, like, people keep talking about him, even in where the Trifolk were. They're kind of like, oh, why is he doing this, doing these trash raids? Like, he's just gonna cause problems for the rest of us. So they're kind of like, you already see kind of Rudo being labeled a bad person, even by people he lives within. And he just always goes there to like try to grab other people's trash to make them into something useful, which is what he does with this bunny that this girl just like tossed away that he found there. And this girl like walks up to him. Chiwa was her name, and she's like the only one that kind of treats Rudo with some sort of like he's some sort of person, like an actual person, and not like somebody who's the son of a criminal, which we found out that Rudo's dad was actually sentenced to the pit, which is like where they send all the humans that are deemed trashed or criminals or people to be disposed of because they've done something wrong that people in the sphere don't like. And because Rudo's dad is is the it was labeled a criminal, he eventually gets labeled the son of a criminal, and also like basically put in the same way where like, oh, when's he gonna be just like his father eventually? Like we should just get rid of him now and save us the trouble of having to do it later. But even though everybody in the side of town where Rudo is, there's still light and hope in there where this guy Recto actually is taking care of Rudo, and took care of Rudo since he was a child. He found him, and he and starts poking fun at Rudo like, hey, you could have just like, given her the stuffed bunny instead of like making a fool of yourself. I'm sure she would have like really appreciated that. And we get a little backstory of how Rudo feels about Recto and how he's very grateful that he has raised them and all that, because when his father was condemned to be the criminal and sent to the pit, he was basically, he felt like he was left alone. And not only that, he had like a big major accident which completely wrecked his arms, and he's still kind of recovering from that, where like he says that he's always feeling in constant pain. But because Recto came in to save him and to take him in and give him some of the gloves, this pair of gloves that he's now wearing that people call like, that essentially look all worn out, kind of like trash in this world. And because he gave him those hands, he's like, well, my hands don't really ache as much when I'm wearing these gloves, so you can kind of take like some symbolic type of you can have it be symbolic, where it's because the gloves are kind of like Recto's protection towards him, and also you can just see it as like, because he doesn't have to see his hands and the accident, he can actually view himself as more human or more worthy, which is really interesting for me because Rudo's just, you can see that Rudo just absolutely places value in everything but himself. So the fact that these gloves kind of like give him that sense of acceptance and sense of pride in himself is really interesting. And later on, we see we see Rudo try to find Chiwa because he wants to actually give her the stuffed bunny. And on his way there, we kind of see what happens to people that get sentenced to the pit. And not only do we get to see that, we also get mentioned that everything eventually ends up in the pit, like all the trash that this sphere people don't want anymore get thrown out to the pit. So like you can kind of see this is their way of the sphere's way of like staying clean, or like putting putting a wall up and putting a society society wall for like that there's even something worse than tribesfolk. Like anything that goes to the pit is either considered non-existent or dead, or just the absolute worst of the worst. It could be like even consider hell, as the sphere is like really high up. So like sphere is kind of what could be the society version of like heaven, whereas the pit essentially sends everybody to hell. So Rudo ends up giving the doll to Chiwa, and he's all happy about it, all gleaming, all like, oh, I gotta go tell Recto that I actually accomplished the task of giving her the doll. And once Rudo arrives to where Recto is, there's this masked guy that was eyeing him before that had completely uh gone in there to take care of Recto, and kind of, so he ended up, this mask guy ended up killing Recto, and Rudo tried to stop him, but he obviously is too weak and couldn't really get the job done. And eventually, when he's trying to see Recto and try to take care of him and make sure he doesn't pass away, Recto kind of tells him, "Listen, Rudo, you gotta change the sphere. It is only something you can do." So like, on Recto's dying words, he kind of tells Rudo that the eventual goal for him would be to change the way this society works and change the way that this hierarchy works, to where like everybody can have equal standing or equal opportunity, because the way things are going is only uh, going to continue to provide this kind of separation of classes in it. But unlucky for Rudo, he gets found out by the apostles as with blood of Recto, and instantly gets labeled the criminal that did the deed. And even though Rudo tried to explain that it wasn't his doing, there was like really no way for Rudo to prove his innocence, as there's no other bystanders, and the mask guy just kind of ran away after knocking him out a bit. So Rudo gets sentenced to the pit, and as he's getting sentenced to the pit, you start to really see Rudo come to terms and come to realize how messed up this society is, and how people just want to see blood, and how how everybody starts viewing people that get sentenced to the pit completely different, as almost like worse than trash. Like, if you if there was trash, the people that get sentenced to the pit are even below that. And Rudo's like, yeah, screw all of you. I'm gonna come back, and I'm gonna get my revenge, essentially. And as he's getting sent down to before he gets sent down to the pit, he sees Chihuahua even turn on him. So like, now he sees that anybody can turn on him, and that no one no one in the sphere is actually who they claim to be, or who they pretend to be, and that people just turn on anybody at any given point without even being proven guilty of their crimes. So you can really see kind of this propaganda just really is ingrained in everybody, that anybody sentenced to the pit is criminal, and there's no going back, no going, and no one doing that anymore. So Rudo gets sent down to the pit, and the animation as he's getting sent down, all the keyframes are outstanding. I absolutely love this first episode, and it lives up in a cliffhangers. Rudo gets sent down to the bottom of the pit, surviving somehow, and to to his surprise, it actually is not as bad as he thought, but it does have this stench of like trash. So anything that was smelling, anything that's not of worth is there. So you can already see why he would consider it hell, and especially after it ends off with him encountering a trash beast. So I think this episode was outstanding. 9 out of 10 for me. Dandadan, episode 14. So we are continuing with the Evil Eye arc, and I love that it basically starts off with Gigi trying to stop Okarun from, first of all, biting him, and then he starts having to be more protective towards Okarun and Momo. And at first you're kind of left in the dark as to how he's able to do that, as Okarun and Momo have been completely overtaken by these psychic waves, and both of them can't really control what they're doing, and they're not even at their full senses. But somehow Gigi is the one that is in control of himself, and does have his own free will and his own self-thinking, which the only one that's not surprised by it is Turbo Granny, which just kind of lets you know, like, hey, how come? She lets him know, like, yeah, you didn't know why you're not affected by it. That's weird. And we we then see Gigi like take glass after glass through his arm, through his palm, and I just love that the anime kind of keeps that kind of like blood blood show and kind of that cut visible to an extent, and we really see Gigi like show out and be a protective friend towards them, and she he even like tries to go outside and tries to get them to safety, and then eventually he does, which then we later find out is because the ULI was plaguing him this entire time he was in this house actually protected him from the psychic rays by emitting its own like psychic waves. And it's really interesting that this evil eye yokai is protecting him while also causing him lots of harm, as we saw that the reason why his parents are in the hospital was because the evil eye has this psychic wave that causes people to want to end themselves. Or at least that's what the Turbo Granny said, that if you look into its eyes, you'll want to end it all. Which it could be because of him, or it could be because the Earthworm has those same psychic waves. So like it's a could be a mixture of the both, but seemingly it seemed like it was the evil eye that did it, and so the Turbo Granny kind of warns them not to ever look into his eyes, or you'll be caught in it. And Momo and Okurun get a good time to like recuperate from that, and Okurun decides, all right, well, time to go full throttle on this Earthworm, and actually slices it, but it slices his head off clean, and then it regenerates. So not only do we have to worry about psychic waves, but now this Earthworm also has the property to regenerate. And so it's turning out to be like more of a nuisance than anything, and it looks like it's gonna become really hard to beat, as they'll probably have to wipe it clean without giving it a chance to regenerate itself. So Gigi kind of like takes a step back and then gets caught in the evil eye's point of view. So we see Gigi go through the experiences that the evil eye yokai went through, and we really start to see kind of the yokai that are actually in the show have also are more like to the the other people that are currently living in the show, as they all gone through certain hardships and certain trauma that have triggered their them to become attached to the world. And because of that, Gigi notices that the third eye has some good to him. uh Basically, the evil eye backstory is he was always kept away and locked away, and as he had to watch kids just his age just play around without a care in the world. Meanwhile, evil eye had absolutely nothing, completely locked away, not allowed to have any friendship, not allowed to even see the sun. His body was malnutrition, while everybody else was he saw was living their best lives, living a full life, and meanwhile he was just running away. And then it came to we see the Kiddo family start using him as sort of like the sacrifice, which we know was what started their whole ritual to send off send sacrifices to appease this sea serpent or the earthworm that they're currently facing. And in order to do that, they tied him up and they let him burn at the stake. And it was quite jarring to see such a person like just go through that and then come out as a ghost, see everybody else living a happy life, and they just want to be involved in it. They want to feel the warmth of having a parents having a nice meal, and while the kids that are in the family can see them, he is not even hit the parents just end up and killing themselves after seeing him. So it's one of those things where he wanted the joy and he wanted to be able to play, but at because he was in a house that was cursed by this earthworm that has those psychic rays that everybody wants to end themselves. He couldn't ever have that joy. It was even after death, it was still taken away from him. So at one point, at the very last one, that he takes over this boy who was probably the family previous to Gigi, and that's the Jokai that Gigi gets to see now. And after witnessing that, Gigi's kind of like taken back, like, oh, Evil Eye's not that bad. So, so he doesn't listen to Turbo Granny's warning, where it's like, yeah, don't be messing with him. Stay away from him. It is not a good yokai. If you think it is, it'll completely take you, and it'll try to destroy us. Which Gigi refuses to listen and chases down where chases where the body is, goes downwards, and eventually finds it, and it's like, well, you know, I'm I'm not a I'm not sure, but like he's not a bad person. I can feel it, and one of the things I do love is that Gigi, while being there, does get to see the evil eye again and see the body again. And once he's there, he doesn't try to run away. He's not scared of it. He's more so like, because he's seen the memories of it, he wants to appease it. He wants to make things right, so he tries to play with it in its own spirit form, and then his body gets taken over by the evil eye. So once the evil eye kind of takes over his body, it's like all hell breaks loose, and Turbo Granny was like, yes, this is what the evil eye was after all along. Gigi's quite the genius. Didn't you hear your grandma call him a genius all that time back? It wasn't just because she wanted to say that and because he was smooching off of her. He's actually one of those few that are allowed to be called geniuses. And essentially he has such a high spiritual energy that is now also, that if tamed, could be like really well. And not only that, but he also has like great physique to boot, where even Turbo Granite is like, yeah, I would have loved to have taken over him instead of like Okarun. But yeah, Gigi, this evil eye taking over Gigi's body is a menace. Completely goes off the rails and starts beating down on Momo, which then gets interrupted by the earthworm. And I love the technique that the evil eye use, which is like gathering the souls, or the tormented souls, or all their anguish, just into one spherical bowl, and just starts using it kind of like to play football with it. And the the way they've drawn it all, like every single kick, every single uh, hit was like so well good, so well done. And eventually the earthworm kind of like leaves him, kind of scared for its life, because evil eye Gigi is just too powerful to deal with. And not only that, because he's also harnessing the all the spirits that were there harboring uh, anger and stuff. It made it even stronger. And then it goes and turns its attention back to Momo, and it's not looking good for Momo until the boy of the hour, Okarun, arrives and saves the day, kicking Gingy leg. And you'll see a photo of that in here. But yeah, no, this episode was very, very action packed and very heavy on the lore, and I just love having that. Even though the yokai seem to be evil spirits at first. They're also humanized in a way, and that's really great because it lets us know that yes, these yokai were once humans, but now that they're yokai, they still it could be they still want that ability to be human again, and having that is also like a leeway for Gigi to get his body taken over, where he allows it to become human esque, and yeah, no, absolutely 10 out of 10 episode for me. Dr. Stone, episode 13. So we're kicking off Dr. Stone again, second core, finally back up, and it starts off with giving us the backstory of Sino and Stanley and how they met, and really love how Sino just kind of resembled a lot of early Senku, just trying out certain things, although it was like with heavy weapon artillery, so it's kind of like completely different than what Senku started off with, but also kind of in the realm of what he likes more, but still having that same energy of like wanting to learn, wanting to do trial and error, which he does fail at using this railgun that he made because he didn't get quite right the right angle, and Stanley comes along and just kind of fixes that for him, and it's like, yeah, here you go. It's not luck, it's just skill. And I love that Zeno is kind of telling Stanley about like how wonderful science is and how elegant it is to just wanna he wants to keep learning and keep reaching new conclusions, and as long as there's more to learn, there's more to gain. And Stanley kind of takes a notice of how excited Seno got while talking about science, and he realized, well, if I stick with them, like something good might happen. So he kind of agrees to allow Seno to show him the light of science, and they shake hands, and it's like one of those things that Seno's like, yeah, I never actually got to experience shaking hands with somebody else. And Stanley's like, well, would you look at that? We're kind of, at least in that aspect, we're pretty much the same. So with that, you can already see that because Seno and Stanley have their own quirks, or they have their own thing that they like. Stanley using weapons and Seno doing science. These two were probably isolated from their peers and kind of ostracized or not looked at enough, and did not really have a lot of close friendships. But because they have this kinship where they're both kind of like isolated and they're both chasing something they both love, they grew this friendship with one another. And love that that's how the episode kind of starts off, with Seno looking back or dreaming about the time he met Stanley, and then the opening hits, which the opening fire, it is so good. Like the visuals, the song, it all matches up. It's still like a little step down from last core, but I think it's so well done so far. 2 out of 2 in openings. And then we go and we start they start this like mini recap of like the last few episodes of the season of the last course, so anybody that just kind of tuning in can kind of like gauge where they're at and what's gonna happen next. So if you didn't watch the last core, just watch like the first minute or two of this episode and you'll be caught up. No biggie. um so the essential plan is they're trying to avoid Stanley, as he's most likely gonna go chase them down to the ends of Earth, like he said he would, and try to get Sino back. And their job is to figure out how to get to South America and to the origin of where the petrification stuff happened before Stanley can get his hands on them. So to be able to achieve this, the most likely thing to happen, or the most unlikely thing to happen, however you want to point it out, Seno and Senku realize, well, we have the two most brilliant minds here. What if we work together to try to actually locate where the origin of the petrification beam started? And in that aspect, Seno and Senko are like, yes, we're both scientists, like instead of like being, since we're here now, we might as well instead put our differences aside and start working together to figure things out. So as they're both sharing notes, we get to a nice conclusion, or like a nice reveal, that Seno actually realizes that uh, the petrification beam was sent in by somebody at the moon. So like Seno knows about the, he doesn't necessarily know about Y-Man, but he knows that the moon is very important to uncovering all the secrets to the petrification beam. So he's also, he's all in the know now, just with everybody else. And then we get the side of like Seno's people and what's happening there on that side. And we have Matsukase, who is injured from the last assault, and he uses that as a way to sneak on board where he knows Ginro is. And to poor guy's fault, he doesn't realize Ginro was actually there because he's scared and he wanted to avoid going with Senku and them. He's not there to do any kind of like reconnaissance work. He's just there trying to live. And he kind of just tells him like, I know you're here to scout and do some reconnaissance work. Very brave of you, and I'm just here to assist you in any way I can. And Ginro kind of freaks out because Matsukase kind of just like collapses because his injury is actually quite severe. Like he is not resting like he should, and it's probably like reopening up the wound even worse. And then we go back to Senko's crew and what's happening there, and Chrome just goes to Francis and tells him like, hey, let me pour the tea, because he has like ulterior motives, as he realizes both Senku and Zen are like the two most brilliant minds there. So he's like, they're probably working on a lot of mathematics, a lot of scientific stuff, and it's gonna be very important for me to like get in there, try to understand what they're saying, and really be more prepared for on what to do next. So he went in there trying to get more knowledge, and until he decided to open up, Senku and Senna were just blowing bubbles. So it was really a nice, like, oh, they're probably very professional, to, oh no, they're just silly people that have big brains, which then ends up being true. They're both very professional, but also very silly, yes, because the bubbles are kind of representing what the petrification beam was gonna be like, and they tried using that as a way to like dictate how the beam travels. And Crumb realized something very important, that if it did go from the south upwards, then Senku, being in the opposite direction of Senna, would have to be, who would have to start petrifying from the ground up. But he remembers that Senku told him that he actually got to see the petrification beam through the horizon, so it wasn't that it came from the ground up. So just from that, we can already tell, and based on like previous stuff that's happened, it probably means there was more than one petrification beam, and it was probably like scattered all over the globe, or scattered enough to where everybody got hit from the head down. And then also, like, they start trying to explain to Chrome about replicating like certain test results by saying something about like, if a person can see a ghost, then it really doesn't mean much to a scientist unless they can constantly keep proving that the same person can see ghosts over and over. Then it's worth something of scientific value. And then we have like the nice shot of like Seno and Senku just still trying to do their stuff. And it pretty much ends off with like them having to cross their minds and work together to figure out like the exact location, which ends up looking like it's gonna be somewhere in the Amazon, I believe. So good stuff. Oh, and from the other side, we do get to see what happened with Matsukase and Ginro and Stanley was really intelligent and really much of a pulling a bluff on Ginro, where he pretended that he was gonna end up shooting Matsukase because he wanted to find out where Senku and the crew were, and Matsukase wasn't coughing up that info, so he realized, well, if he's here, there's probably somebody on board that he's trying to protect. So then Ginro kind of gives his position off and blabs to everybody that Senku's going to South America. So now we have Stanley knowing where to go, and because their vessel is so much better equipped for travel, they're probably gonna catch up to Senku more so than get left behind. So I'm really interested to continue talking about Doctor Stone again. It's one of my favorite series. I absolutely love the crew. I love how everybody has to play a role, and even in the opponent's side, they all have their own role to play and their own strengths. And I just love that now we have one of the two smartest people working together instead of like working against each other. So really interested to see if Stanley catches up and whatnot. So this episode's like a 8 out of 10 for me. Clevatess episode 2. So kicking off this episode, kind of picking up where the last one left off, and how they were both Clan and Alicia were being taken away by these bandits, and Alicia kind of like asks Clan or Clevatess like, hey, why are you so frail in a human body? He's like, well, it's because I'm human and I don't want to give anything away of what my identity truly is. He's like, if I wanted to, these would be no problems, but I kind of want to have the whole human experience and be able to live it until Luna reaches her full potential and becomes the king of the humans. So I do like this kind of aspect to it where he wants to be more of like the shadow leader, and he doesn't want to just like use his overall strength to impose himself. He wants to see what humans are like. He wants to really experience it, to see what they're worth, to see what they do, to see how they behave to certain things, and to also experience the hardships that it comes with being human. As you know, he is a dark beast, and he doesn't necessarily always get to experience such things like humans do. So I do like that. It does give him kind of like this humanity trait where he wants to actually get to know somebody. And once they arrive to the bandit base, somebody instantly tries to escape, but they get pretty much taken care of with a knife in the back. And then it deters the other slaves that are there from ever running like away like that guy. So Alicia gets sent off to this to see the boss, and Clan gets sent off to see this random girl. Her name is Nell. Uh, she's the one that's gonna be taking care of Luna because she is the one that can breastfeed her. And once we get introduced to Nell as kind of like this klutz that's really scared or really timid and doesn't really know how to defend herself, and for a good reason, as we later find out. But we have the people that took in Alicia kind of like their leader. It's not necessarily their actual leader, somebody that's just replaced their leader, because the leader's away, he's the one that's in charge now. He starts kind of like trying to decipher who she is and why she's not scared of him or being with bandits, or even scared of the dark beast that he just has as a pet. And he quickly starts to put things together, as like how there was this expedition with 13 heroes, and one of them was a woman, and then realizes, oh, you're probably that woman because you had all these these red stones that can only be found in that mountain where Clevatess is. So it's really interesting seeing this guy just break down information, and really gives us a nice vibe that not everybody's gonna be mindless, or they're not gonna be pointless. So I like that this boss actually feels like a boss. He feels very intelligent and not necessarily just old bronze. But yeah, they figure out that it's Alicia, and so the guy kind of makes it known to the other bandits, like, listen, you can go and have your fun with her. Just just bring her back in one piece, and we can start looking for these. We can start looking for regalia, which we find out these people, there's ways they make money, and that's through slaves and through selling fake regalia, just by covering them with red paint from the stones is enough to fool people into thinking that these were produced from the hidden village. And because the village is no longer like there thanks to Clevatess, their business is probably booming right now. And then we go back to Klein and his situation, and how he's at this bar and he's kind of just handing people food, and they're like, wow, I really like this guy, he's very obedient, he's actually pretty strong for his size, and he doesn't really nag us and doesn't really disobey us. So I'm glad we found him. He's kind of like a gem in here. And the girl's kind of like, the girl that took in Nail is kind of like, well, he's kind of creepy to me. He has this horn, so I thought he was an upgrade, and he has those red eyes. So I do like that. Despite the fact that Klein has kind of assumed this human appearance, he still has has the appearance that's not fully human, and people are kind of seeing him and questioning why he's strong, or like at least giving it a second thought. It's not just like, oh, he just came in here with this baby. And as we see more of this, what happens in this bar, like Nail is also in here working, and she gets tripped up by these two bandits, and they're like, oh well, you spilled booze all over the floor, we're gonna have to go and punish you. And punish her they do. They just, the next time we see them, see her with the other two, she's kind of like getting spanked, and she has a black eye, so you can kind of assume a lot of things happened uh with them and her. And she her, after everything that happened, her first thought is just like, well, I better get back and nurse that baby, as she actually produces milk, because as we find out in this episode, that she, she had a stillborn, and it almost broke her. Like, you could literally feel like she said that she wanted to end herself there and then and there, and she was ready to give up on everything because of everything that's happened to her so far, including the stuff with her mother. Because the first of all, the mother had her while she was being kept there as a slave, so she was just born into being a slave in there. And she didn't realize it then, but because her mother was there, she was able to avoid a lot of the beatings. But at one point, her mother was no longer there, so she was probably either sold off, or worse off, she probably jumped off a cliff that I'll talk about in a bit. But the mother was not seeing, so like, instead of, because they didn't have her to take the beatings anymore, they kind of switched it over to her. And she even points out, like, because of those beatings, I kind of lost most of my teeth, and I lost a lot of my brain cells, and I lost a lot, including like, I'm partially deaf from one ear. It just, she was just brutally hit and tortured. And not only that, because she is part of the slave and she did have a stillborn, you can kind of put two and two together, that there was more to what they did that the anime kind of left off of, but just given enough like implications that it happened. And yeah, like the only reason why she was able to keep living after suffering all that is because this one baby that ended up feeding off of her, and it brought her some sort of warmth, and she realized she still had value to give, even in a place like this where it's, she realized she can keep going as long as there was babies to feed. And that's what kept her going all these years, including the fact that she had two more stillborns after her first stillborn. So there's multiple instances where they just took advantage of her. And yeah, Klein, though, the good soul that he is now, kind of realized the kind of person Nell is, and that pretty much sealed the deal for him. That Nell was the person that they were gonna, that he wanted to be the wet nurse for Luna. So he offered her like, "Hey, let's get out of here. Let's go. I can take care of you, and you won't have to worry. You won't even have to be here where you take beatings and all this." And Nell just kind of like said she would love to, but Clan is also a slave there, so there's no way they could run off. And more so, she was more scared about like what could happen to the babies that are there that need her to feed them, or like future babies that could be born there that need her to to be fed from. And it's just rough seeing like somebody be both a slave because of the her physical limitations, and also be a slave mentally because of all the trauma that she faced. It was just a rough episode to experience. And yeah, so like I'm really guessing that Klein's just gonna end end up just revealing himself to these bandits and just take care of them so that they can get their wet nurse and they can get on out of there. But we'll see if he does that, because the next person that really does something really brave is Alicia, who's being taken away, and she realizes there's these slaves that were given a deal where they would dive deep into this water to retrieve this regalia that was legendary, that was said to be in the deepest part of this lake. But and if they did that, they would be set free. So this one brave soul tries to do it, but then gets instantly eaten by dark beasts. And yeah, like even his wife just kind of was looking on, like, damn, they just ate him. And like, like, she's distraught. She is shocked at the sight of these dark beasts. And Alicia points out, like, yeah, you guys weren't really weren't really gonna let him go free, because if that was the case, you would have unshackled them, even though you knew that there was no way that he could have done that. But they didn't. So you could see that these bandits kind of take this as a sport and as a sense of entertainment, where they get to torture, or like get to give these slaves a sense of hope, and then instantly be met with the harsh reality that there is none, by getting eaten by these lake beasts. And these lake dark beasts are a very important part of like the history in this world, where they were like seen for the first time like 300 years ago. And the one that encountered them was like supposed to be the strongest hero that the hidden village produced, and even he wasn't able to beat them. So like, yeah, these dark beasts are like no joke. They don't take no prisoners. And then Alicia gets encountered by this one guy that's like all pervy, and tries to like eye her, or like get to tells her that he sees her even though he's blind, because of all the vibrations and sounds, so he can detail exactly how she looks, her shape of her body, and all this. And he just wants to have his way with her. And then for the first time, she actually gives thanks to Clevatess, because she is able to try out something she wouldn't have if she she knew she would die from, which is jump off a cliff to take this guy with her. And also, like, she kind of dislocated her own like arms to put her hands from behind her back forward and really nail this guy down to the ground. And the episode ends off with her body just battered and covered in blood, and it was such a great cliffhanger. Like, this anime was like super dark this episode, and it did dive a bit deep into like a very dark and depressing topic for like mothers. So I it this anime is just really good. It continues to impress me, and it's one I do recommend, but with some caution of a lot of like triggers in this one. 9 out of 10 episode for me. The Water Magician, episode 2. So in this episode, Rio starts off by wandering around the beach, and he finds this person ashore, and he takes him in and takes care of him, makes sure he's back and healthy, makes sure he survives. And once this guy wakes up, he realizes, oh shoot, I did make it, as he does have a flashback that he was getting shipwrecked in the middle of the sea. So he goes in there, and you can instantly see how, upon first look of Rio, he starts to already kind of gather information. Like, he notices all his clothes, or his lack of clothes, and also the place he's surrounded by. He notices the how green it is, and notices that he's the only one there. So he starts kind of like wondering what's his deal. So it's one of those things where I do feel like this swordsman known as Abel kind of really wanted to see if Rio was going to be a threat, and started like just keeping kind of close tabs on him, taking mental notes for himself as the episode carries on. So one of the first things that we do notice is that Rio is able to detect people, but when Rio approached him at first, he wasn't able to detect them. So it could be something to do with the way magic works here, or maybe it could be because Rio's not having any like bloodlust or any intent to kill. This guy doesn't pick up on him him being approached by Rio. And we have like Rio and this guy kind of have a meal together, and he kind of takes note that Rio doesn't have to do a long incantation to pour water, and he's just kind of like asking a lot of things. And then he's also kind of taking it back, like, oh, he could have taken that the wrong way. So you can notice that this guy doesn't mean harm. He doesn't mean like any sort of malice towards him. He just really speaks forward and doesn't really think about everything he says and how it comes out. So like later on, he just keeps apologizing for all his blunders. And as they go back to the wreckage where Rio found Abel, he comes to this conclusion that, okay, well, there's this town near here that we can probably head towards, and he wants Rio to come with them. And Rio kind of like thinks to himself for a bit, and it's like, you know what, I could use an adventure. So he does decide to go with Abel, and it's one of those kind of like things where he kind of looks back and it's like, I was really actually prepared to live my whole life here. Now I'm just gonna leave this comfort and head into danger with this guy I hardly know, And it's really nice seeing Rio be open to going out, because in the first episode it was more so like, yeah, I just want to kind of laid back life. And now he's like, because he's had his fill of this laid back life, maybe he decided, okay, well, this is a perfect opportunity for me to get out of here and get a new experience, find out more about this world. Because I'm sure he got curious as to what else is out there, and talking with Abel kind of intrigued them, because he realized he wasn't the only there was more than the 20% he initially thought of people that could actually use magic. So maybe he's curious as to what other types of magic there are, what other things are in this world. And as we go on and they head head on. First, Rio wants to say his goodbyes to the Dullahan that he's been sparring all this time, and on their last spar, the Dullahan gives him his new robe, which now solves the problem that, or like the question that Abel had if like he had any more clothes. Well, now he does. Abel also noticed that Rio doesn't use a stab when using magic, so this just means that a Rio heading into this world of magic users is already way above them, or at least has a step up above them, because he realized that you don't need long incantations to perform magic. It's just a thought, and that you also don't need to focus it purely on a staff. You can, as long as you can think of it, you can conjure it. And not only that, he realized that it can be used to different sizes and scales that probably over there weren't really thought, or not a lot of people know how to properly use or upgrade their skill. And so as they carry on their journey, they encounter lesser folks, and this is when you start to really notice that Abel's keeping kind of close tabs on what Rio can do. And as he noticed that when Rio poured him a glass of water this time, or a cube, he didn't use the same incantation as he did the first time. And so there's questions being asked and more intrigue, because even Rio tried to play it off as like, maybe it's because I'm a water magician that I don't have to do long incantations, when Abel asked him why his incantations are so much shorter. And even then, like, Rio is also note, as he's going with Abel, he's learning things like how most non-magic users have to use skills like combat skills to make up for the lack of magic. And since we know that Rio has been secretly training with the Dullahan at night, he's probably gonna start picking up skills, combat skills, to accommodate him when he doesn't have the use of magic. And as they're carrying on, they meet this wyvern like pack that goes and faces this behemoth, and we have this behemoth that can nullify magic. So it's very interesting. Rio, if he went up against that, he would have been done so. So he was really hoping that Abel would be the one to step up, and Abel's like, "Yeah, that wasn't gonna happen." And Abel talks about like dungeons and the elves and the dwarves, so we get more insight of the world that we're in, where there's a lot of magical creatures in it, and they each have their specific thing, like dwarves with blacksmithing, elves just kind of live in the forest and protected. Really great stuff. And then we have Rio, who tells Abel like, listen, we're gonna keep running into these wyverns until we get rid of them, so we might as well just put up a fight for it now and save us the trouble of fighting them later. But Abel was kind of taken back, like, we can't do that. They're, even with like like a full squad, there's still like a lot of casualties that happen when facing them. And it was just like, well, would it be better if I just like clip their wings, or so you can use your skills on the ground? And he's like, yeah, that would make it a lot easier. So he does just that, and yeah, Abel kind of gets a boost of confidence in that, and it's like, yeah, let's do it. And I just love this whole aspect that Rio and Abel are kind of fitting off of one another. Like, Rio is getting information out of him, and Abel's just becoming more optimistic, becoming more braver, more battle heavy. And it's just exciting seeing these two feed off the energy of one another and actually banter back and forth. Even though they've barely known each other, they just have such a good chemistry to them. And one of the last things that really was, I really wanted to make note of, was the fact that when they met a Griffith, that's when they knew they met their match. Like, they were scared of it, and the one that acted first was Rio. So Rio's the more active one, the one that, because he's already faced a lot of danger, maybe he's more attuned to how to get away from it better. And Abel, who probably hasn't had the same life experiences or like the same near death experiences, he just kind of froze up, even though he's supposed to be a knight. So luckily, Rio is a quick thinker, and I love that they they're so close to the town that they just look out and it's like, yeah, we made it, you know. But yeah, this anime is so beautifully animated, and I gotta say I do love how slow paced it is. A lot of isekai, when they get introduced, they just kind of rush through the beginning portions to get to the middle portions, but this one is really taking a sweet time. Like, you can see that there was a lot of love and care put into it, and I'm really enjoying how well the characters are coming out and how much better it really turned out to be than what I initially thought. And yeah, this one I think I will recommend. And this episode, I'm rating it a 8 out of 10. But that's gonna be it for this episode. And if you enjoy what I discussed, what I talked about, and you want to get more more videos notified to you, just hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and comment. And until next time, bye.